Hello everyone, welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith, and we're going to be starting this solo setup video for Arkham Horror 3rd Edition. This game was designed by Nikki Valens and is published by Fantasy Flight Games. So the purpose of this video is basically to show you how to get Arkham Horror 3rd Edition to the table as quick as possible without any rules explanations whatsoever. Then we'll move into a playthrough where the first part will take you through a full game round, which will then explain a typical game round rules, and then for any kind of specialized rules or situational rules, we'll learn them as we go through the playthrough. Thank you guys so much and hope you enjoy the solo setup. The very first step of the solo setup is to choose a scenario. There are 4 in the base game. The very top left one is Approach of Azathoth. The top right one is Feast of Umaroth. The bottom left is Veil of Twilight, and the bottom right is Echoes of the Deep. The game recommends that you do the Approach of Azathoth first, which will be the top left-hand corner one. So we're going to take this card, take a look at the front of it and the back of it to help us with the setup. The second step of the setup is to prepare the board and encounters, and in order to do so, we're going to simply take this particular quest or scenario, flip it over on its back side. It's going to give us information specific to the setup as well as the monster deck, Mythos Cup, and finalizing the setup. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to turn it like this, and we're going to follow these instructions in order to create the game board. So the first thing we're going to do here as part of the prepare board and encounter step, we have to get the boards out that pertain to the scenario in question. Those scenarios are going to be North Side, Downtown, East Town, Merchant District, and Rivertown. So I'm going to separate and find those from this group of 5 double-sided tiles, lay them out in order as we just saw on the back of the scenario card. So we now have all 5 of the major tiles or neighborhoods set up correctly. We have Northside, Downtown, Easttown, Merchant District, and Rivertown. And now we're going to move into finding the street tiles, and we can easily figure those out by taking a look at the back of the scenario card, and it'll denote which street tiles are supposed to be in between each of the neighborhoods, as well as the icon on those street cards to easily reference which ones should be connected. So I'm going to go ahead now, we're going to connect all of those streets in between each of our neighboring districts. All the street tiles now are all connected into our neighborhoods, and as you can see, there's some different icons around. You'll see a bridge icon here, you'll see this street light right here, and you'll see a tree symbol or icon right here. What do those mean? Well, they tie into this deck called The Streets. And on inside of this deck, we have 3 different parts, very similar to Eldritch Horror. Residential for the street light, bridges are bridges, and scenic is considered the tree. So now you know what each of those 3 things mean, and those will be pulled from this deck. So let's head over to the encounter decks and find out how we're going to build that for this scenario. Now, based on the neighborhoods that we pulled out for our scenario, we're going to go ahead and find those neighborhood decks. So first off, I've separated them into North Side, East Town, Rivertown, Downtown, South Side, Uptown, Miskatonic University, and Merchant District. You're also going to want to go ahead and try to find your deck of the streets cards. You'll be needing those as well. There should be 8 cards for every deck that's shown here on film right now. And the reason for that is those decks are the standard decks for those areas. There are, and you will see, a whole bunch of other cards that look very similar to it and have the same fronts. So for instance, you'll think that you're supposed to connect or add these into the Uptown deck, for instance. The reason you're going to know that there's a difference is on the actual back side of that card, you will see in the bottom right hand corner that there is a number there that states you're going to need to find the cards 1 through 8 with this particular icon in the bottom right hand corner. Once you find those 8 cards for each of these locations, you've got the starting encounter decks for those particular neighborhoods. That's great. What these ones are considered event cards. We'll talk about them later. You're going to want to keep them out of these decks at the beginning, and they have a clue icon in the top left hand corner. They're shaded differently on the back, and they also have the actual encounter or scenario that you're planning on going up against, as well as a completely different numbering system for them. So you want to make sure you keep those separate at the start of the game because they're not going to be mixed together in the setup. So for my scenario, I have the North Side neighborhood, the East Town neighborhood, the Rivertown neighborhood, Downtown, and the Merchant District. So these 3 I do not need, so I'm simply just going to remove them from the game. They're going to go back to the game box, and now we're going to go ahead with these 5 plus the Streets deck, and we've got our cards or encounter cards set up. We can shuffle each of these decks and put them in a respective position within arm's reach. The next step is to prepare the event deck. So each scenario has a unique deck of event cards that correspond to the 5 neighborhoods in that scenario. And so the event cards are kept in a single deck despite not sharing the same card back. And we talked about that earlier. That's this deck right here. So even though the backs are exactly the same, they're considered different for the event cards. What you're going to want to do is grab this gigantic pile that shows the clues in the top left-hand corner as well as the actual scenarios listed on the bottom, and find the scenario more so of the one that you're actually playing. So in this case, I'm playing Approach to Azathoth, so I'm going to go through here and literally grab every single one. Now you'll notice most of them are in order because I haven't messed things up yet. It's fairly fresh, and I also reset things after playing it. But after you have a few plays, it's always good to put these back into order, or at least just group them by their bottom portion of this card. So you'll go all the way up to 24 because every single one has 24. And then once you find those, you'll see that the other ones go into other scenarios. You can remove those from the game. What you're going to do now is you're going to take these 24 cards, and you'll notice the backs are all different because they're going to throw special events into this whole scenario. And you're going to shuffle these cards, and then you're going to place these cards like this in a really, really nice holder that comes with the game in order to be able to easily pull out new event deck cards as the gameplay opens up. For this next step, we're going right back to the scenario card. At the very top, it has Monster Deck. You're going to want to find all of these monsters, and they're all mini cards that come from this deck here, which you can separate off. It has all the monsters in it. You're going to want to find all kinds of monsters that are specific to your scenario. It tells you how many and which ones. So right now I'm going to grab all those. We'll lay them all out. I'll show you a bird's eye view of all of them. We're going to shuffle those up, and that is going to be our monster deck. So I've gone ahead and separated all the monsters out for this scenario. We have an Abyssal Servant, Eyeless Watcher, High Priest, 2 Hooded Stalkers, 2 Occult Ritualists, 3 Robed Figures, and all the keywords that say the Hound of Tinlos. We pulled out all of those monsters. So we've got them all in a group. We're going to shuffle them up. It's going to create our monster deck for step number 4, and all the rest of the monsters can go back to the box. Another piece of the setup is to always take a look at the scenario card, because the scenario card will also have a legend here called the map key, and basically it'll let you know which icons relate to which particular monsters may be a part of the scenario from the beginning. So in this case, in this particular scenario, the robed figure is the moon icon, and we currently have 2 spaces where the moon is. One is in the northeast side of downtown, and then we have the northwest side of Rivertown are both going to have a robed figure. So let's go to the game board and drop those cards in those positions to start us off. So we're going to have a robed figure in the downtown area in Independence Square. And we're also going to have a robed figure in the Black Cave in Rivertown. You're going to want to make sure that you place the monsters in the indicated spaces with the ready side up, which is the side showing the most art, and that is this darker or black side of the card. Lastly, for this step, we're going to take the remaining monster cards, we're going to shuffle these up, and then we're going to place them within arm's reach near the game board, and that's it for step number 4. The next step is creating the Mythos Cup, and this is step number 5. You'll see on the back of the scenario card there's a Mythos Cup section here. Very similar to Arkham Horror, the LCG. There are tokens that associate themselves with the symbols shown here, and we're going to want to build the Mythos Cup using an opaque container. You can use something that's solid. In my case, I'm going to go ahead and use a black bag. So I'm going to fill this with all the tokens that is shown here in the Mythos Cup. I'm going to bring those tokens on screen so you can see them. We'll toss them in the bag, and the Mythos Cup will be completely set up. Just like that, that's all it takes. Get all the tokens that match the symbols here next to the Mythos Cup section of your scenario card, just like we have here for our scenario Approach of Azathoth, and you have successfully completed putting together the Mythos Cup. Now take all of these tokens, find some opaque container, fire them in, and you're all set. The 6th step is to create the headline deck. So find the deck that has the back that looks like this, and literally shuffle that deck, and then grab 3 of them, deal them into a face-down deck, and these 13 cards are going to be your headline deck for the scenario. So this is going to create a randomization within the headline deck for every single time you play the game. In step number 7, we're going to prepare the assets and the display. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find the item cards, the ally cards, and the spell cards. So we got item right here, spells right here, and allies right here. You're going to want to shuffle those 3 decks in order to create a randomization. You're not supposed to know what are in those and in what order. Keep them face down. Then take the top 5 cards of the item deck and place them in a face-up row next to the item deck, and that row is going to be called the display, and those items in the display can be gained or bought using money during encounters in the game. In certain locations, such as the general store, will allow you to buy items from the display by spending money, of course. So let's go ahead and shuffle shuffle the item deck, and then we're going to draw 5 cards to put into our display. Okay, so the display is going to contain the Bulletproof Vest, common item, the Grotesque Statue, a Mystic Scroll, a Tattered Cloak, and the Elder Sign Amulet. Next, you're going to want to find the condition cards and the special cards. The special cards are in this deck and have a back like this. Condition cards are cards like Blessed and Cursed, which we know of from previous games, and they actually are double-sided. So a blessed condition right here on one side. If you flip it over, you can be cursed. So you're going to want to keep these in alphabetical order because conditions will be asked for during gameplay throughout Arkham Horror, and it's just good to have them ready to go. Same with the special cards. It's also wise to have those in alphabetical order as well because they may be called upon during the game, and as you can see here, they're already in alphabetical order to start with. So after every game, it's always wise to put them back into that order so that it makes it easy to find them when a particular encounter or special scenario references them. The 8th step of this setup is to prepare the token pools. You'll be using these quite a bit, so you're going to want to begin familiar with them. You've got the health tokens right here, sanity. You've got your self-focus tokens right here, money tokens, remnant tokens, and clue and doom tokens. And these ones are double-sided on both sides, so they flip over either way. Just keep those close by. There's obviously more of these that come into the core box, but I'm only showing a small number of them on screen right now. Get these close by because you'll be using them often and become familiar with them. If you happen to have proxies for these things, as I do, I currently have the Top Shelf Gamer LCG or Arkham Horror LCG health and sanity markers, which I'll be using. So I'll be substituting an actual 3D token for the brain for the insanity and a heart, a legitimate heart for the health during the playthrough. Just things like that. And even for the money, if you want to actually proxy in some real money, hey, anything to spice it up makes the game even more fun. So we'll be doing that during the playthrough, but this is the stuff that comes inside the core box. Moving right along to step number 9, preparing the archive. So the archive is a collection of cards that are used by scenarios to create an evolving narrative during the game. Archive cards have an assortment of different fronts and backs and all share a large card number in the top left-hand corner that you can see on screen right now. You're just going to want to keep those all in a single stack and in numerical order, as you will be instructed to use them throughout the scenario, and it'll be easier for you to find them if they are in numerical order. The next step is step number 10, which is choosing your investigators. And Arkham Horror comes with a ton of them. So as you can see, there's a number of different ones, and they're all different, unique, have different stats, whether it's for their skill checks, their health, their sanity. But there are 12 unique investigators to choose from the core game already. And of course, as we know from Fantasy Flight games through expansions and whatnot, we will end up seeing all of the characters at some point or other. So these are the 12 characters I'm going to get to choose from. The game itself recommends choosing at least one Mystic and one Guardian for your first game. So because I'm playing solo, I'm going to control 2 characters, and I'm going to make sure that we get a Mystic and a Guardian. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to randomly pick one. So I'm going to throw these things behind my back, and I'm going to pull 2 out. As long as there's a Mystic and a Guardian, we're good to go. So what do we got here? We got Agnes Baker, all right, and the next one is Calvin Wright. Okay, let's check to see whether or not this matches up with what we need to have for the playthrough. Now again, I'm only following the first time rules. You do not have to find a Mystic and one Guardian in order to have a valid setup. This is just strictly a recommendation from the rulebook when you're starting your very first play. I've already played this before, but I'm doing this because some of you may not have. So we got here for a primary role for Calvin. He's a Guardian and a Rogue, so we got the Guardian covered. That's good. So is Agnes a Mystic? That's the question. Of course she is. We know Agnes from the LCG and from the old Arkham Horror, so she is definitely... Oh, she's a Guardian too. Look at that. So she'd cover both. You'll also notice the starting possessions there in the bottom left-hand corner, as well as stories. So both of them have those. We're going to obviously go ahead now and grab the starting possessions for each of our investigators. We're going to give each of our investigators an activation token, which we'll be using during gameplay, as well as their standees. So we've got those all squared away. Let's get those starting possessions. The next thing you're going to want to go ahead and do is find all of your investigator cards, and you'll find those easily by matching the picture, the name, as well as the individual himself on his character sheet. So you're going to take a look at the back of the cards, and you're going to see that these line up with some of the starting possessions, so it's very easy to find these. You'll also note in starting possessions, some of them you gain right away, so Spirit Dagger he's going to gain and have that right off the bat. Until the end of time he's going to have, which is a condition. It's an innate skill. And then this one here is called Voice of the Messenger, and he'll have it if he wants to. It's optional. If he wants to have this ability from the get-go, he's going to have to take a Dark Pack condition from the beginning of the game. That is a condition card, remember? So that's one of those ones that has front and back going on. There's no, in other words, there's no generic backing to that one. It's double-sided. So I'll have to make a choice when we get into part 1 of the playthrough as to whether I take this. I'll leave that up to you guys in the comments. Let me know whether you think we should take Voice of the Messenger. Here is what will happen if we do. I'd like to see whether or not you guys think this is a good idea or something that's worthwhile. Now we'll move over to Agnes. So she's got her heirloom. So this one she's going to gain right away. No problems. She's also going to, we're also going to be giving each of these individuals some money. We'll do that in a second. She can also choose one, either the Storm of Spirits or the Flesh Ward. So she has to make a decision between these two cards. So again, I'm going to leave this up to you guys. What do you think we should take going into the playthrough? Which one of these two cards is the best? If you need to see them or read them, just pause the screen and you'll be able to do so. Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to know your feedback. We're also going to go ahead and we're going to find 3 money each, and you can find them just like this, these tokens. We're going to give each investigator 3, and then we'll have everything we need for these investigators. Next, we're going to reference the scenario starting space, which you can see right on this scenario is the train station. So we're going to put both of our character or investigator standees on that particular space to begin the game. So the train station on the north side is in the southern part of North Town. So we're going to go ahead, place our 2 investigators there to begin the game. We just have a few more things to finish up before we get into the playthrough. So now we're moving into step number 11 called the final preparation step. And in this step, we're going to start it off by spawning our starting clues. It's very simple. We just basically draw 3 cards from this event deck right here, and whatever is listed on them, whichever neighborhood comes up. So in the first one's going to be north side. The rest we don't know until we pull. But we're going to put clues at each of those locations. We're also going to take the card that we pull and we're going to go over to the deck it corresponds to, the encounter deck, and we're going to grab the top 2 encounter deck cards off that pile. We're going to take, for instance, we'll be taking 2 of the north side cards from the north side deck, encounter deck. We'll be grabbing this card, shuffling the 3 of them together, and then placing them on top of the encounter deck, not this event deck. So cards are going to be coming out of this event deck that are specific to this scenario, and eventually gradually being merged into the encounter decks, making them very, very specific, and also keeping to the flavor of the scenario, which is really cool. So the cards that we're going to get from this right off the bat for clues is going to be the north side, downtown, and finally the Merchant District. I almost said Miskatonic University, but it's the Merchant District. So what I'm going to do now is going to put clues on the central spot of each of those neighborhoods, and then we're going to put those cards we just drew into the top 3 randomly of each deck, and that's including each one of these cards. So this worked out pretty good because our investigators started at the train station on the north side, and now there's going to be a clue in the central space at that particular neighborhood. There's going to be a clue in the central space of the Merchant District, and a clue at the central space of the Downtown District, which is all within easy reach of where we currently are. So that's fantastic. We're going to then take all the cards that we just drew from the event deck, and now we're going to merge them into those other decks. Again, as a reminder, we're taking each card that was drawn. We're then going to go to the encounter deck and grab 2 encounter cards off the top from the same corresponding deck, shuffle this one into those 2, so we'll have 3 in our hand shuffling, and then we'll place them back on top of the same, in this case, Merchant District deck, and that's it. Next, we're going to go ahead and place starting Doom. So basically, we're placing 1 Doom token on each space indicated on the back of this scenario card right here. You can see there's Doom tokens there, 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 and there. So we're going to go ahead and put Doom tokens on each of those locations right now. We're going to have 1 Doom token at Velma's Diner. We're going to have another Doom token at the Independence Square with the robed figure. A Doom token is going to be on the Arkham Advertiser. 1 Doom token placed at the Black Cave. And lastly, the last Doom token on the Unvisited Isle. Next, we're going to do Spreading Doom once. And what that means is we're going to draw the bottom card of the event deck and discard it face up next to the deck, which is right here in front of us. And we're going to place 1 Doom token in each space that has a Doom icon next to its name on the card. So let me show you how that works. So we're going to grab the back card, and it happened to be Easttown. We're going to flip it over, and anywhere we see a Doom token marker next to the name, where there's one right here, Hibbs Roadhouse, is going to be the only location that ends up getting an extra Doom, and this is going to be discarded. So we'll go ahead and place a Doom token at Hibbs Roadhouse. The very last thing you're going to do in the final preparation step is called the final scenario setup, and this is going to involve resolving any effects in the finalized setup portion of the scenario card, as you can see here. For this particular setup, it says to add cards 2 and 3 to the codex. So you might be wondering what those 2 cards are. So I'm going to go ahead and grab those 2 cards. Those 2 cards are going to make up what is called the codex, which literally is created from the beginning of a scenario and sits beside this scenario card. So let's grab those 2 cards and place them here. So from the archive deck, we're going to go ahead here. We're going to pull 2 and 3. So it's going to be Anomalies and Deja Vu. These 2 cards are going to sit next to or beside the scenario card. Lastly, we're going to create the Anomaly deck by shuffling the Temporal Fissure Anomaly cards together and placing them in the play area. So basically take the card deck that looks like this. There's many different backs on these actually, and they'll be used across different scenarios. But we're going to grab this deck, we're going to go and turn it over, and we're going to look for that particular title we just listed off. So we're ripping through. Once we find it, you're going to take every single card from that set. So you can see here, Temporal Fissure. We're going to go all the way through to the end. And that is going to create our particular Anomaly deck for this scenario. We're going to shuffle them together and then place them next to the game board within easy reach. And that's going to do it, guys. We have now officially set up Arkham Horror, the 3rd edition, for the very first scenario, Approach of Azathoth. I'm very excited for this one. So obviously here we have the game board fully set up. I'm going to go over to the left here and show you the setup of the cards that I have laid out, as well as to the right where we have our scenario specific cards as well. This is what the left hand side of the table looks like for me. I've set up the cards in this fashion. You can change the layout of how these sit on the table however you wish, but this is how I did it for me. You'll see that for each of the neighborhoods, I put them actually exactly where they were for each of the tile neighborhood layout. So they're laid out exactly as they would be, and the streets are in the middle at the bottom, because we have 3 up top for the neighboring tiles that we set up over here on the right, and then 2 at the bottom. Makes it easier to quickly reference them, but of course they're color coded, so it's straightforward. These other decks down here below it, I also kept the item deck with the available area for purchasing other cards in the supply. That is going to be right up front center and close within easy reach, because we'll be buying things as we go through the scenario quite a bit. I wanted those to be front and center for the playthrough. Let's take a look at the right hand side of the board and our player boards. The right hand side of the board has the scenario card, the 2 cards that make up the codex area. We have the monster deck, we also have the anomaly deck, we also have the archive above that, and then we have the event deck inside that fancy holder up at the very top with some tokens for the Mythos cup over here to the right in a bag. That's pretty much all I needed to set up on either side. I found this was the best way to keep things separated. Let's take a closer look at our investigators now. On the far right-hand side of the board, we have Agnes Baker. On the back side of the card, we still have to make a choice between the Storm of Spirits and the Flesh Ward. I need your help. I want you guys to help me decide which one she should start this scenario with. Let's go over and take a look at Calvin. Lastly, on the left-hand side of the board, we have the Calvin Wright Investigator along with his cards, his activation marker, and $3. On the back of his card, we also have a decision to make that I want you guys to help me out with. If we go ahead and decide to take Voice of the Messenger, we're going to take a Dark Pack condition to start the game, so I'd like to know, should I risk that or not? Let me know in the comments below. And that's going to conclude the Arkham Horror solo setup video for the 3rd edition. I'm super excited for this playthrough, guys. This game brings back so many memories from the 1st and 2nd edition, and I cannot wait to see what is new, different, and changed along with you guys as we go through this. I have played this game off camera multiple times, but I'm going to be excited to see your reactions as we go through this adventure together, for those of you that are either on the fence about picking this one up or interested in general of just seeing how I do. If you're not interested in the game, that's perfectly okay too, because at the end of the day, this is just to show you how the game is going to play, and then it's going to leave the decision in your hands as always. If you saw anything that I missed in the solo setup, let me know in the comments below. We can easily correct it before we begin the playthrough. Thanks, and as always, keep on rolling solo.